My name is Margaret Ann Whitlow. Most folks in Beaufort, South Carolina just call me Miss Maggie, and on the morning of my 80th birthday, I cut into a 5-tier coconut cake in the ballroom of the Beaufort Yacht Club and told 300 guests the following words. Before we eat this beautiful cake, I have one announcement. As of 9 o'clock this morning, I have legally adopted my dearest friend from first grade, Mrs. Evelyn Rose Parker. Evelyn is now my daughter in the eyes of the law, and upon my passing she will inherit everything: the house on Bay Street, the cottage on Fripp Island, the stocks, the bonds, and every stick of furniture my 3 children are currently measuring with their eyeballs. Thank you for coming. Let's have cake. You could have heard a shrimp drop. My 3 children, Charles Jr., 56, Elizabeth, 54, and William, 51, sat at the head table looking like they'd been hit by the same hurricane, because in a way they had. I suppose I should back up. I was born in this same town in 1944, only child of a shrimper and a schoolteacher. Married Charles Whitlow Sr. in 1965. He made good money in commercial real estate and left me very comfortable when he passed in 2011. We raised 3 beautiful babies in the big white house with the Widow's Walk on Bay Street. I thought we did everything right. Turns out money and manners don't always travel in the same suitcase. It started small. Missed birthdays. Christmas cards with only the kids' names signed. Then the comments at Thanksgiving. Mama, that house is an awful lot for one person. You really should think about downsizing. Have you considered one of those nice continuing care places in Charleston? By 2019, the comments weren't comments anymore, they were campaigns. Charles Jr., the eldest, a tax attorney in Charlotte, began sending me listings for luxury senior apartments with concierge physicians and 5-star dining. Elizabeth, the middle one, an interior designer in Atlanta, started measuring rooms when she visited, just in case we need to stage the house for sale. William, the baby and a trust fund golfer in Hilton Head, flat out asked for a reverse mortgage so I could enjoy my money while I'm still young enough. I smiled through every dinner, every phone call, every passive-aggressive post-it note left on my fridge about clutter. Then came the real kicker. In January 2023, I fell on the back steps and broke my hip. 6 weeks in rehab, 3 months with a walker. During that time, my children held a family meeting without me and decided I was no longer capable of living independently. They hired an elder law attorney paid with my own money to draw up guardianship papers. Charles flew in, sat by my hospital bed, and slid the documents across the blanket like they were a breakfast menu. Just sign, Mama. It's for your own good. We'll handle everything. I looked at my firstborn, the boy I once carried on my hip while shucking oysters, and asked, "Do you love me, Charles?" He blinked. "Of course." "Mama, then why are you trying to take my house while I'm still breathing?" He stammered something about protecting assets. I told him to leave before I called security. When I got home, the locks on the Bay Street house had already been changed for my safety. Elizabeth had boxed up half my clothes for donation. William had scheduled an estate sale. I moved into the Fripp Island cottage with 1 suitcase and my cat, Mr. Darcy, and started planning my 80th birthday party. Not for revenge, mind you, for justice. And maybe a little bit of fun. While I was healing on Fripp Island, I did 3 quiet things that nobody noticed until it was too late. First, I called my old friend Evelyn Rose Parker. We met in Miss Hattie's first grade class in 1950, shared pimento cheese sandwiches, and promised we'd be best friends until we were old as the oak trees on the point. Life kept us close until high school graduation, then sent us different directions. Evelyn married a Marine, moved all over the world, and ended up widowed and living alone in a tiny apartment over the hardware store on Carteret Street. She had no children, no close kin, and the same laugh that used to get us sent to the principal's office. I invited her for tea. We sat on my cottage porch watching dolphins chase mullet, and I told her everything my children had tried to do. When I finished, Evelyn patted my hand and said, "Maggie Whitlow, you've always been the smart one. What are you going to do?" I smiled. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve." Step 1. I hired the best estate attorney in Charleston, a shark in pearls named Caroline Montgomery, who eats guardianship petitions for breakfast. Step 2. I had Caroline draw up adult adoption papers. South Carolina allows it if both parties consent, and it's in the best interest of the adoptee. Step 3. Evelyn and I drove to the Beaufort County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning when nobody was looking, signed the papers in front of Judge Willis, who'd been in my Sunday school class in 1955, and made it official. Margaret Ann Whitlow now had one legal daughter, Evelyn Rose Parker Whitlow, age 79. Step 4 was the party. I rented the entire Beaufort Yacht Club ballroom for the Saturday nearest my birthday. Sent 300 cream-colored invitations with gold script. Mrs. Charles Whitlow. Senior requests the honor of your company as she celebrates 8 decades of a life well lived. My children assumed they were throwing the party. They'd been planning it for months, arguing over the menu and who would give the toast. I let them think that. I paid for everything myself, quietly, from an account they didn't know existed. The week before the party, Elizabeth called in a panic. "Mama, the club says the deposit's already paid and the contract is in your name only. What's going on?" I told her, "Don't worry, sugar. Just wear something pretty." Charles tried to corner me about the guest list. He wanted to invite his senior partners. I said, "It's my party, darling. I'll invite who I please." William asked if he could bring his new girlfriend, 29, bottle blonde, calls me Miss Maggie May. I said, "Of course. The more the merrier." The night before the party, I sat up late with Evelyn, drinking decaf and addressing the new place cards in my best Palmer penmanship. To the left and right of the birthday chair, Mrs. Evelyn Rose Parker Whitlow. My 3 biological children were seated at table 12, near the kitchen doors. Evelyn laughed until she cried. "Maggie, you're meaner than a sack of snakes when you want to be." I told her, "Honey, I'm not mean. I'm biblical. An eye for an eye, a daughter for a daughter." The morning of the party, I had my hair done at the same beauty parlor I've gone to since 1962. Miss Loretta gave me soft curls and a little extra height because a Southern woman needs armor. I wore the pale blue silk dress I bought for my 50th anniversary that never happened. Pearls Charles Sr. gave me in 1985, and the satisfied smile of a woman who knows the storm is about to hit land. At 6:58 p.m., the yacht club doors opened and Beaufort society poured in. Mayors, ministers, every member of the garden club, half the DAR, and all 3 of my children dressed like they were attending a royal wedding. They had no idea they were actually attending a coronation. The ballroom looked like a dream out of Southern Living magazine. White hydrangeas the size of beach balls, silver candelabras, the string quartet playing Carolina in the morning, and a 5-tier coconut cake so tall it needed its own stepladder. My 3 children were already holding court at the head table, waving to people like they were sure would be toasting them in a few minutes. Charles Jr. had his practiced politician's smile on. Elizabeth kept touching her necklace, my mother's pearls, by the way, like she was measuring how they'd look on her. William was taking selfies with the cake. At exactly 7:15 p.m., the quartet stopped mid-note. The lights dimmed just enough for drama. A spotlight hit the double doors as they swung open. I walked in on Evelyn's arm, both of us in matching pale blue silk, pearls gleaming, hair higher than good manners usually allow. The room rose as one. Cameras flashed, applause that rattled the chandeliers. We took our time gliding to the head table. I kissed cheeks, accepted birthday wishes, and finally stopped in front of my 3 biological children. "Evening, y'all," I said sweetly. "Mind scooting down a smidge? My daughter and I need our seats." Charles laughed like I was joking. Elizabeth's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish. William actually said, "Very funny." "Mama." I just smiled and waited. Evelyn and I sat. The children were left standing there like forgotten umbrellas. A waiter appeared out of nowhere and gently escorted them, politely but firmly, to table 12 by the swinging kitchen doors, where the smell of fried shrimp is strongest. You could have heard a debutante drop her fan. I stood, tapped my champagne flute with a spoon, ting, 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 and the room went church quiet. First, thank you all for coming. 80 years is a long time to collect friends. And I see every precious one of you here tonight. Polite laughter. But before we cut this magnificent cake, I have one announcement. I reached into my little beaded purse and pulled out a certified copy of the adoption decree, holding it high like the Declaration of Independence. As of 9 o'clock this morning, I have legally adopted my dearest friend from first grade, Mrs. Evelyn Rose Parker. Evelyn is now my daughter in the eyes of the law, and upon my passing she will inherit everything. The house on Bay Street, the cottage on Fripp Island, the stocks, the bonds, and every teacup my children have been eyeing since their daddy's funeral. I paused just long enough for the gasp to ripple all the way to the back wall. Some of you may wonder why I would do such a thing. Simple. Blood doesn't always mean family make. Love does. Loyalty does. And Evelyn has been more daughter to me in the last 6 months than some folks have been in 60 years. I looked straight at table 12. Charles was purple. Elizabeth was crying into her napkin, whether from rage or embarrassment. I couldn't tell. William looked like he'd been slapped with a dead fish. The room erupted, not in outrage, in applause. Standing ovation. Whistles. Someone shouted, "Amen," from the garden club table. Evelyn stood beside me, tears shining, and curtsied like a debutante. I raised my glass. Now let's cut this cake and show Beaufort how real family celebrates. The quartet struck up Sweet Caroline. The cake was cut, and my children sat at table 12 eating shrimp that had been sitting under heat lamps for 20 minutes while the entire town lined up to hug their new heiress. But the night wasn't over. After the cake was served and the champagne flowed like the Combahee at high tide, the real show began. People kept coming up to Evelyn and me, kissing our cheeks, asking for pictures, calling Evelyn the new Miss Whitlow with genuine delight. Old Judge Willis, retired now but still sharp as a shrimp knife, shook my hand and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "Maggie, that was the finest piece of legal footwork I've seen since the war between the states." Proud to have signed it. Charles tried to corner me by the oyster bar. "Mama, we need to talk privately. This is insane. You can't just—" I cut him off with the same smile I used on third graders who lied about homework. "Charles, darling, everything is already done. Signed, sealed, filed, and celebrated. Now go get your sister and brother. I have one more toast." He opened his mouth, closed it, and obeyed like the little boy who used to fear my wooden spoon. I climbed the 3 steps to the little stage where the quartet sat, took the microphone from the bandleader, and waited for silence. "Y'all indulge an old woman one more time." The room hushed instantly. "I want to tell you a short story about family. When my Charles died in 2011, he left me comfortable. Not rich by some standards, but comfortable enough that my children never once asked how I was feeling, only how the portfolio was doing. When I broke my hip last year, not one of them stayed longer than a weekend. But Evelyn moved into the cottage with me, slept on a cot by my bed, and spoon-fed me soup when my hands shook too hard to hold the spoon. When they tried to take my house keys, Evelyn drove me to the lawyer. When they tried to declare me incompetent, Evelyn held my hand in court. When they changed the locks on the only home I've ever known, Evelyn gave me the key to hers and said, "What's mine is yours, always has been." I looked straight at table 12. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Tonight I chose my family. Then I turned to Evelyn, took both her hands, and said the words I'd practiced in the mirror for weeks. "Evelyn Rose Parker Whitlow, you have been my sister, my confidante, my partner in crime since we were 6 years old, stealing honeysuckle behind the school. Tonight I am proud to call you my daughter, and I sleep easy knowing that when I'm gone, every sunrise over Bay Street, every oyster roast on Fripp, every Christmas Eve in that big white house will be guarded by the one person who never once measured my worth in dollars." The room exploded again. People were crying, clapping, hugging strangers. The quartet started Amazing Grace, and half the room sang along through tears. My 3 biological children left before the song was over. I watched them go without a word. I didn't need to say anything else. The whole town had said it for me. 6 months have passed since that night. The adoption is ironclad. Caroline Montgomery saw to that. Evelyn moved into the Bay Street house with me. We turned the downstairs bedroom into hers and painted it the same soft yellow it was when we were girls dreaming under the oaks. My children have called exactly twice. Once to threaten lawsuits. Caroline sent them a letter that shut that down quick. And once to ask if they were still in the will for anything. I told them, y'all are in the will for the same thing you gave me when I needed you most. Absolutely nothing. But you're always welcome for Sunday dinner if you learn how to apologize with your whole heart. They haven't shown up yet. Every evening, Evelyn and I sit on the widow's walk with sweet tea and watch the sun sink into the marsh. We laugh about the old days, plan garden parties, and argue over whether the cake that night needed one more teaspoon of vanilla. Sometimes tourists still stop to take pictures of the house, with the double galleries and the historical marker that now reads, Whitlow Parker House, home of Margaret Ann Whitlow and Amp, daughter Evelyn Rose Parker Whitlow, beloved daughters of Beaufort. Some things are worth more than money. Some victories don't need a courtroom. And some families are chosen, not born. If you're ever in Beaufort on a Saturday evening, come by. The porch light's always on. The cake's always coconut. And the best seat in the house belongs to the daughter I chose at 80, because love doesn't have an expiration date, but greed sure does.